Hi, my name's Don Zier, and I'm going to be showing you how we make the French onion soup that we've brought to the Lenten Soup suppers for several years. The first thing I'd like to do is go through the ingredients with you. I've taken the liberty of already slicing the onions because it's tedious work. I use a food processor and I wouldn't do it without it anymore. 4 large yellow onions, 2 cloves of garlic chopped pretty finely, a tablespoon of sugar, and a tablespoon of flour. To finish it, we use croutons, and I prefer provolone cheese. Whatever cheese you decide to use, you want to use one that has some good moisture content in it, and don't use shredded cheese from the store because it's so dry that it'll start burning before it'll start melting. What I'm going to do now is put the onions into the Dutch oven on a medium-high heat. I already have the olive oil in there, and if it looks like the onions are getting a little dry, we can always add a little bit more. So I like to turn these so that they don't burn to the bottom. You don't have to turn them constantly, but about every 2 minutes or so you should turn them over. Make sure that they have enough moisture and that they're not turning black. I like to use fresh garlic, cut it fairly fine, but you can't put the garlic in too soon because it burns very easily. We have the sugar. Now the sugar we can put in now, it will help sweeten up the onions, and it's not going to be burning, so I'll just sprinkle the sugar in. Give it a nice turn again. I'm also looking for any onions that may not have been chopped up fine enough by the food processor, and I'll cut them into smaller pieces. These onions are going to get soft and they're going to reduce in size as time goes on. While the onions are cooking, I'm going to do one little step that we're going to need to do after the onions are finished. I like to add some flour to it to thicken the broth just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is put the flour in a small bowl, a small cup. I use a measuring cup, and I'm going to pour a little bit of the broth into that, and then we'll whisk that together to incorporate the flour into the broth. We want to make it nice and smooth just so we don't have any flour lumps in there once we put it in there. We're getting down to the point the onions are getting more golden colored. They're soft. I'm going to add the garlic at this point. And I'm going to get that all mixed around. And just give it a little bit more time in there for that to do its magic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the beef broth. There's a total of 4 cups, including what I have the flour mixed in. So I'm going to add that at this point. Then I'm going to add the flour broth mixture. I'm going to stir that around a little bit and then let this heat back up to till it's starting to get close to boiling, and at which time we're going to set it back on the simmer burner. The amount of time that you let the soup simmer is, my recipe that I've had for 40 years says 20 minutes, but I like a lot longer than that. The soup that I'm going to be showing you to finish, I did that for 45 minutes. Minimum of 20 minutes, and I'd say at least 45 minutes. If you're doing a large batch, we did it in our crock pot, our slow cooker, and it cooked for hours before we took it to the church. Okay, so you can see that the edges of the pot are starting to bubble and boil. So this is where I am going to move it back on my stove, back to the simmer burner. And you're going to want to let this sit, like I said, minimum of 20 minutes. I would say 45 minutes is better. Longer is better. So I have a pan of soup that I cooked earlier, and you can see that it has turned a light brown. If you waited longer, the soup would get darker, and as far as I'm concerned, darker is better. This recipe would 4 bowls similar to what I have here, or if you do it in cups, it would probably serve 6. What I'm going to do now is show you how we finish it in our house. I'm going to put croutons. A lot of restaurants would use bread that they crisped up. We found that this works well. This is what we used at the soup suppers. I just like to get it on top, something to hold the cheese. I'm going to layer cheese over it. I like to let the cheese hang over the edge of the bowl a little bit, like they do in the restaurants. Now, the way I do it, and the way we did it at the soup suppers, we used this as a culinary torch. Okay, I know you're thinking you're going to turn this off because I don't have a culinary torch. Well, Yvonne looked for it. She bought this for me a while back off of Amazon. They're $25, and there's a million uses for this thing. Start the torch, and I just start melting the cheese. And you're going to see this cheese is going to droop down over the side. And you might want to put a little extra time in the middle to just get the cheese a little bit. You can see it's getting a little bit browned on top. You don't want to burn it, but you just want to give it a little bit of texturing. That is the finished product. Now, as far as the culinary torch is concerned, obviously we do it for cheese. Most people know you can use something like this for creme brulee, for helping to glaze the glaze on a ham. I use it with barbecue sauce on ribs at the end, just to make sure I get the sauce to the right texture. I'll use the torch on it. One of the things that we've decided we really liked at restaurants and we've learned to cook at home are char-grilled oysters. And they require butter and some grated Parmesan cheese on top. And this is a perfect thing to melt at, and it actually finishes the oysters. It makes them puff up. And I've actually used this in a non-food situation. I was helping the Hammer and Nails group over at the Faith House put a cove base in a room. Turns out that it's a good idea to soften the base at when you're going around corners. So I took my torch with me, I softened the cove base, and shaped it around the corners. There's plenty of uses for it. It's not one thing, something you're going to buy just for the soup. It's good for a lot of things.